Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world where everyone wants to be seen, everyone's talking, tweeting, snapping, posting. But let me tell you something powerful. When God is preparing you for a major breakthrough, the first thing he often allows is delay, not to discourage you, but to develop you. Delay isn't the absence of progress, it's the presence of a deeper purpose. When doors don't open as quickly as you expected, when the opportunity you prayed for seems to be stuck in traffic, you begin to wonder if God heard you at all. But what you don't realize is that the delay is the very thing that's shaping your character, sharpening your discernment, and setting the stage for the miracle. Delay is a spiritual pressure cooker. It doesn't just test your patience, it refines your identity. In the waiting season, God starts peeling back layers of pride, fear, insecurity, and ego. He lets you sit in the space between where you were and where you're going because that space forces you to choose. Will you lean on your own understanding or will you trust in his timing? The truth is, we love the idea of breakthrough, but we resist the process of preparation. You want the promise without the pressure, the platform without the pruning, the influence without the isolation. But God doesn't operate on your timeline. He operates on his blueprint. And sometimes that blueprint includes seasons of divine silence, unanswered prayers, and closed doors, not because you're being ignored, but because you're being equipped. In delay, God removes the crutches you've leaned on. He lets your connections dry up. He lets your plans fail. Not to punish you, but to reveal that your dependency was in people, platforms, and plans more than it was in him. Delay strips away the illusion of control. It humbles you. It teaches you that if God doesn't move, it won't happen. That kind of trust can't be taught in comfort. It's forged in frustration. And while you're waiting, you begin to shift internally. The old desires start to feel small. The things that used to motivate you no longer satisfy. You begin to hunger for clarity more than applause. You long for assignment more than attention. That's the sign that the delay isn't just external, it's transformational. God is not only changing your circumstances, he's changing you. Your prayer life deepens. Your perspective matures. You no longer chase the blessing, you chase the one who blesses. You stop trying to manipulate outcomes and start surrendering to obedience. That's what God is looking for, a vessel that's not just available, but aligned. Delay reveals your posture. Will you worship while you wait? Will you sow when nothing is sprouting? Will you speak life when everything feels dry? Delay is not about punishment, it's about preparation. Preparation is the soil of breakthrough. What feels like God holding you back is actually God building your foundation. He's giving you roots before he gives you fruit. Because fruit without roots will rot under pressure. God knows what's ahead. He knows the weight of the blessing he's about to release. If you receive it too soon, it will crush you. So instead of rushing you into it, he readies you for it. The delay is not denial. It's a signal that something bigger is being constructed behind the scenes. You may feel overlooked, but you're being observed. You may feel forgotten, but you're being fortified. You may feel like nothing is moving, but heaven is working on your behalf. God doesn't waste time. He uses it to refine, to teach, to elevate your faith to a place where when the breakthrough comes, you're not just ready to receive it, you're ready to sustain it. When God begins to prepare you for a major breakthrough, one of the signs that becomes evident is an increase in spiritual sensitivity. You start to feel things more deeply, not emotionally, but spiritually. The things that used to entertain you, the conversations you used to enjoy begin to feel empty. Your spirit becomes alert, your discernment sharpens, and your tolerance for distraction diminishes. It's not that you're becoming antisocial or indifferent, it's that God is elevating your awareness. You start to sense when something is off, even if you can't explain it. You can walk into a room and feel the spiritual temperature. You can hear someone speak and discern the spirit behind their words. You begin to crave time in prayer, not because it's a religious duty, but because it's a lifeline. This heightened sensitivity isn't just about seeing what's wrong, it's about perceiving what God is doing. You start to feel his nudges more clearly. A verse that you've read 100 times suddenly hits your spirit with new power. A sermon you hear speaks directly to your season. A moment of stillness becomes a moment of revelation. God starts speaking to you in ways that make it impossible to ignore him. He speaks in the quiet, in the confirmation of other people, and in the middle of your chaos. And the more you lean into that sensitivity, the more you start making decisions that don't make sense to your flesh, but they make perfect sense in the spirit. You say no to things you used to say yes to. You walk away from places that used to feel comfortable. You start stewarding your energy, your focus, and your time with a new level of intentionality. This isn't about being super spiritual. It's about being spiritually awake. You begin to realize that what you feed your soul matters. You start turning off the noise. You start filtering what you listen to, what you watch, and who you allow to speak into your life. Not because you're trying to be better than anyone, but because you're protecting what God is birthing in you. Breakthrough is spiritual before it's material. And when your spirit starts to awaken, your life starts to shift. You can't explain it to everybody. You don't even try. Because this level of transformation is not always visible externally at first. But something inside of you knows God is stirring. God is calling. God is moving. You feel drawn to the word like never before. Passages come alive. Scriptures stick to your spirit. You find yourself meditating, not just reading. You find yourself listening to worship in the car instead of talk radio or music that once fed your flesh. You wake up with a word on your heart. You go to sleep with a sense of expectancy. Even in the middle of uncertainty, you feel anchored. That's not normal. It's supernatural. God is tuning your spirit like an instrument so he can play through your life without interference. He's removing static from your frequency. He's fine-tuning your heart to his voice, and in that tuning, something powerful happens. You start aligning with his will faster. What used to take you days to decide now takes moments. What you used to debate in your mind, you now discern in your spirit. The more sensitive you become to him, the less susceptible you become to distraction. The spiritual sensitivity isn't just a gift, it's a responsibility. God doesn't make you sensitive just so you can feel. He makes you sensitive so you can follow, so you can respond, so you can obey quickly, because delayed obedience in this season will cost you alignment. It's not just about hearing, it's about moving when he says move, standing still when he says wait, and trusting what he's showing you, even when it doesn't match what you're seeing with your eyes. When God is preparing you for a major breakthrough, one of the clearest signs is that resistance starts to rise in your life. You begin to face more pressure, more conflict, more pushback, and often from places you didn't expect. This resistance doesn't always come from outside forces. It can rise from within you in the form of doubt, fear, insecurity, and fatigue. The moment you start stepping into alignment with God's assignment, you become a target. The enemy doesn't attack random people. He attacks people who are carrying something powerful. If you're under attack, it's likely because you've become a threat. The presence of resistance is not a reason to retreat. It's confirmation that you're advancing. Resistance is a signal that the territory you're stepping into is not unoccupied. The enemy has fortified it, but the pressure you're facing is proof that you're stepping into a dimension where strongholds have to break. Every time God elevates you, opposition tries to distract you. It's not always about destroying you, it's about diverting you. If the enemy can't stop your destiny, he will try to drain your energy. He'll try to get you to question what God told you. He'll try to make the warfare so intense that you give up before the breakthrough arrives. But what you must understand is that resistance builds resilience. Resistance builds spiritual muscle. You don't grow in ease, you grow in pressure. Diamonds form in heat. Oil flows from crushing. Glory follows obedience under pressure. God allows resistance not to break you, but to build you. It teaches you how to fight, how to pray, how to stay rooted in the word, how to trust him when it's dark, Sometimes the resistance comes through people. People who used to celebrate you now criticize you. People who once supported you now fall silent. People you thought were for you reveal that they were only with you for what they could get. Don't be surprised when relationships shift. Don't panic when connections fall away. That's not rejection, it's revelation. God is revealing who can walk with you into the next season and who cannot. Every level requires a new level of alignment. Everyone can't go where God is taking you. Some people were assigned to your comfort zone, not your calling. And God will allow the resistance to reveal the difference. Other times the resistance comes in the form of closed doors. You knock and nothing opens. You try and nothing moves. You sow and see no harvest. And it's in these moments where the enemy whispers that it's not working. But what looks like failure is often hidden favor. God is strengthening your resolve. He's teaching you to persist. He's growing your capacity to handle more. Sometimes he lets things become hard so that when he brings the breakthrough, you won't mistake it for coincidence. You'll know it was his hand and his timing. And as the resistance increases, something shifts inside of you. You stop needing comfort to move forward. You stop looking for validation from people. You stop needing confirmation every 5 minutes. You start to walk with conviction. You start to pray with authority. You start to speak the word like you believe it. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. You realize that resistance is not a wall, it's a doorway. You realize that what's standing against you is smaller than what's standing within you. You realize that every spiritual attack is just a reminder that you're still in the game, still on assignment, still being trusted with more. God doesn't send resistance to destroy you. He allows it to mature you, to refine your focus, to solidify your yes. Breakthrough is costly. It demands courage. It requires that you press forward when every part of you wants to quit. It asks you to keep building when the rain hasn't come. It requires you to worship when the victory hasn't manifested. If you're in a season where everything feels like it's pushing back against you, it may be because you're getting closer than you think. When God is preparing you for a major breakthrough, one of the undeniable signs is the presence of an unexplainable peace that anchors you even in the middle of chaos. This peace doesn't make logical sense. It's not connected to your circumstances. It doesn't come from your bank account, your relationships, or your job status. It comes from deep alignment with God's presence and a rooted trust in his character. Everything around you may look unstable, uncertain, and unpredictable, but somehow your spirit remains steady. While others are panicking, you're praying. While others are running, that kind of peace is not natural, it's supernatural. It's not the absence of trouble, it's the presence of trust. You may be surrounded by things that should make you worry, but you're not shaken. The storm is still raging, but the storm isn't getting in you. You begin to understand the power of Jesus sleeping in the boat during the storm. The same storm that terrified the disciples didn't disturb his rest. That's because peace is not about what's happening around you. It's about who's dwelling within you. When you know who's in your boat, the waves don't dictate your worship. You stop looking at the winds and start focusing on his word. You stop panicking and start praising. That's what happens when God is preparing you for a breakthrough. He stabilizes your soul before he shifts your situation. This kind of peace doesn't mean everything is perfect. It means you've stopped tying your peace to performance or predictability. You've stopped needing to see the whole picture to trust the painter. You've learned that peace is a fruit of intimacy with God, not an outcome of ideal conditions. You find yourself no longer reacting the way you used to. The same situations that used to rattle you now just roll off your back. You've grown in grace. You've matured in mindset. You've discovered that being calm in the chaos is a spiritual weapon. Because when the enemy can't steal your peace, he can't control your posture. God uses peace as a compass. You begin to move where the peace is. You say yes to things that bring peace and no to things that disturb it. You begin to feel the difference between good opportunities and God-ordained ones. You stop striving and start surrendering. You stop forcing and start flowing. Peace becomes your indicator that you're in step with the Spirit. And when that peace settles on you, it confuses the people around you. They expect you to be breaking down, but instead you're breaking through. They expect you to be bitter, but instead they expect you to be quitting, but instead you're moving forward with clarity and confidence. This peace doesn't come from avoiding problems. It comes from walking through them with assurance that you're not alone. You've faced disappointments, setbacks, delays, and losses, but somehow you've emerged with strength you didn't know you had. That's the evidence of divine peace working in you. You've stopped needing external validation. You've stopped obsessing over timelines. You've stopped trying to control every variable. You've realized that your breakthrough is not your job to produce, it's your job to prepare for. And peace is the foundation of that preparation. There's something powerful that happens when peace becomes your posture. You start to navigate hard conversations with grace. You start to make bold decisions without fear. You start to embrace uncertainty as a stage for God's glory. You begin to feel joy rising where there used to be anxiety. You begin to smile even when there's nothing yet to show. That's not naivety, it's faith. That's not denial, it's discernment. You're no longer reacting to the surface because you're rooted in the source. You've learned to walk through fire without smelling like smoke. You've learned to be still and know that He is God even when nothing makes sense. And in that stillness, something shifts inside of you that prepares you for everything He's about to release. When God is preparing you for a major breakthrough, He often begins by stripping things away. It can feel confusing, even painful, because it seems like everything is falling apart. But what's really happening is a divine separation. God starts removing the unnecessary so He can make room for the essential. He takes people out of your life who no longer align with where He's taking you. He shuts doors you thought would stay open. He interrupts routines that once brought comfort. And it doesn't always make sense while it's happening because the things being taken aren't always bad. Sometimes they're good things, just not God things for this season. The stripping process is not to deprive you, it's to prepare you. You can't carry breakthrough while holding on to baggage. The breakthrough requires space, and the space requires surrender. When the stripping begins, your first instinct might be to hold on tighter. You try to fix what God is trying to finish. You try to keep what God is calling you to release. But in this season, obedience looks like letting go. Letting go of toxic attachments, letting go of outdated mindsets, letting go of the false sense of control. When God starts separating you from people, it's not because they're your enemy, it's because they can't handle your elevation. They were part of your past, but not your next. God doesn't just call you to new places, He also calls you away from familiar ones. And the more you try to cling to comfort, the more you delay the calling. This process doesn't just affect your relationships, it affects your identity. You begin to feel like you don't fit in anymore. The places you used to enjoy now feel strange. The conversations you once participated in now feel shallow. You're not being antisocial, you're being recalibrated. God is shifting your frequency. You're no longer satisfied with average. You're no longer content with surface level faith. He's creating divine discomfort so you stop settling and start seeking. Separation precedes elevation. And the higher you go, the fewer people can go with you. The crowd gets smaller, but your vision gets clearer. During this stripping season, God may also remove crutches you've been leaning on. That job that gave you security, that friend who always bailed you out, that platform that gave you visibility. Not to leave you empty, but to remind you that He is the source. When God is all you have, you discover He's all you need. You start depending on Him in ways you never did before. You pray differently. You fast with purpose. You seek wisdom, not approval. You start to understand that what He's building in you is far greater than what He's removing from around you. This stripping season also teaches you how to manage silence. People stop calling. Doors stop opening, answers stop coming. And in that quiet, your faith is tested. You learn how to trust God without the applause. You learn how to obey without the confirmation. You learn how to stand when everything else is shifting. This is where God builds endurance. This is where he strengthens your inner man. This is where he teaches you that you don't need the crowd to validate what he already confirmed in your spirit. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. As things fall away, what remains becomes clear. Your purpose becomes clearer. Your values become stronger. Your priorities shift. You stop chasing after things and start aligning with purpose. You start recognizing that everything you thought you lost was making room for everything you truly needed. What felt like loss was actually pruning. What felt like isolation was actually incubation. God was not removing people, places, and patterns to break you down. He was setting the foundation to build you up. And when the breakthrough finally comes, you won't just step into it. You'll carry the strength, the focus, and the clarity to steward it well. When God is preparing you for a major breakthrough, he often deposits a fresh vision in your spirit that doesn't match your current reality. You begin to see things you've never seen, dream things you've never considered, and imagine outcomes that stretch far beyond your qualifications or resources. This kind of vision doesn't come from ambition. It comes from alignment. God begins to stir something in you that can't be explained by your past and doesn't seem supported by your present. It almost feels unreasonable, even impossible, but something inside you knows it's divine. You wake up with ideas that scare you. You find yourself thinking about problems you were never concerned with before. You begin to ask bigger questions, set higher standards, and expect more from yourself. Not out of ego, but out of spiritual awareness that something greater is being birthed. This kind of vision doesn't just inspire, it disrupts. It challenges your comfort zone. It disturbs your routine. It calls you out of the predictable into the prophetic. God begins to show you a version of yourself that you haven't lived yet. A version that leads, that builds, that creates, that influences, that impacts. And the vision comes with a weight, a holy pressure to move differently, speak differently, think differently. You can't go back to the old mindset once the new vision hits your heart. You can't shrink back into small thinking once God shows you the bigger picture. The vision begins to discipline you. It sets boundaries for you. It causes you to say no to distractions, not because you're better, but because you're focused. You can't afford to waste time when you're carrying a blueprint from heaven. As you carry that vision, you begin to realize how inadequate your current resources feel. You don't have the money, the connections, the experience, or the time, but you have the word. And when God gives you a word, he's also giving you a strategy. The vision becomes your assignment. It becomes the thing that keeps you up at night and wakes you up in the morning. You start preparing for rooms you haven't entered, building for clients you haven't met, creating for impact you haven't yet seen. Faith becomes the foundation. Not faith in yourself, but faith in the one who gave you the glimpse. God never gives you a vision based on where you are. He gives it based on where he's taking you. And as that vision grows, so does the resistance. You face doubt, both from within and from those around you. People will question your timing, your motives, your capacity. Some will think you're reaching too far, dreaming too big, or moving too fast. But you have to remember that the vision wasn't given to them, it was given to you. You weren't called to be understood by everyone. You were called to be obedient to the assignment. And when the vision is truly from God, it won't let you rest in mediocrity. It will pull you into excellence. It will provoke you to upgrade your habits, your circle, your language, your stewardship, because breakthrough requires more than belief. It requires preparation. You start to feel this internal urgency, not anxiety, but a divine momentum. You know you can't sit still. You know you can't wait for everything to be perfect. You feel compelled to move, to act, to obey. That's how you know God is behind it, because it stretches you beyond logic, but strengthens you in spirit. You're not chasing a dream. You're responding to a calling. And that calling won't leave you alone. It keeps speaking even when you try to ignore it. It keeps showing up in your thoughts, your prayers, your conversations. It won't let go because it was planted by God for a purpose. And when he plants vision, he also provides provision. But the provision follows obedience. God doesn't give you vision to tease you. He gives it to transform you, to align you with what he's already finished in eternity and is now preparing to release into time. When God is preparing you for a major breakthrough, it rarely looks like what you imagined, but it always leads to more than you expected. He starts by allowing delays that test your patience. Then he sharpens your spiritual sensitivity so you can hear him more clearly. He permits resistance to build your resilience. And in the middle of it all, he gives you a supernatural peace that anchors you when everything else feels unstable. He strips away what no longer serves your purpose, separating you from what's good so he can give you what's God. And then he gives you vision, bold, holy, unreasonable vision that demands faith over fear and action over excuses. All of it is part of his process, a divine preparation that shapes your character, purifies your motives, and enlarges your capacity. The delay, the stripping, the silence, the stirring, all of it is working together to prepare you not just to receive the breakthrough, but to steward it, sustain it, and multiply it for his glory. When you recognize the signs, don't run. Lean in. God is not just preparing the breakthrough for you. He's preparing you for the breakthrough.